Hey folks, welcome back to True Crime Stories, where we cover the most thrilling true crime stories. Before we get going, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for me. Thanks. And now let's get into today's story.
All right, so are you ready to dive into this case? It's a true crime case with twists and turns like you wouldn't believe. We've got murder, art, science all tangled up at this Harmony Festival. We're going to try to unravel the mystery of Sebastian Carr, this charismatic artist who ended up dead right in the middle of his own exhibit.
It's really a fascinating case, especially when you consider the backdrop of the art and science world and the sources we're looking at, the news articles, the interviews, the forensic reports, all point to this undercurrent of ambition and jealousy. It's like everyone was under pressure just waiting to crack.
Right, yeah. So let's start with the victim himself, Sebastian Carr. What do we actually know about him beyond the headlines?
Well, he definitely wasn't just another struggling artist. He was a complex guy, charming, talented, but with a past he was trying to outrun.
Hmm.
He was very drawn to nature, using his art to explore ideas of transformation and resilience. Like he was trying to transform himself through his art.
Okay, and that's where this troubled past comes in, right?
Dang. Exactly. He struggled with addiction for years, went through recovery, and it seems he was channeling all of that into his art. Makes you wonder if those demons ever really disappear.
It's giving tortured artist, for sure, but was there more to it than that?
Yeah, he wasn't just content with expressing himself. Sebastian, he was aiming for something bigger, more groundbreaking. He wanted to merge art and science in a way that no one had done before.
Which brings us to Elysium Veiled, his final piece. This wasn't just any painting, right?
No, not at all. It was a collaboration with this brilliant astrobiologist, Dr. Elena Voss. They were using her research on extremophiles, those microscopic organisms that can survive in the most extreme conditions like deserts, volcanoes, you name it.
Okay, science pause for a sec. Extremophiles.
Hmm.
What are we talking about here?
Think of tiny little creatures living in boiling hot springs or frozen glaciers, places you'd think nothing could survive. That's what we're talking about. They're like the ultimate survivors, defying all odds.
So how did they tie these extremophiles into the artwork?
They use them as a powerful metaphor for overcoming adversity. The artwork itself was visually stunning, but it went deeper than that. It was about finding beauty and strength in the face of hardship.
And this is where the amethyst dust comes in, I'm guessing. It's not just some random art supply. It's a significant clue, right?
You got it. Amethyst is believed to promote spiritual awareness, protection, purification. They incorporated it into the artwork, literally weaving it into the paint and materials. It's almost like they were imbuing the piece with this energy of transformation and resilience.
Yeah.
Little did they know how important that amethyst dust would become.
Oh, okay, hold on. You're saying this dust is going to be a big clue. Okay, you got my attention. So back to the crime scene, the Harmony Festival. Paint me a picture. What kind of event was this?
Well, imagine this buzzing hub of creativity and innovation. The Harmony Festival was this annual event in a really vibrant university town. It was known for bringing together artists, scientists, and the public to explore the connections between art and science. The energy was electric, with exhibitions, workshops, a real sense of excitement.
Wow, and Sebastian's murder happens right in the middle of this celebration of harmony. That's chilling.
It is, and the discovery of the body itself, well, it was a scene straight out of a nightmare.
Okay, let's talk about that. Who found him and what did they see?
It was Maya Lark, Dr. Voss's protege, who found him early in the morning after the festival's opening night. Picture this: Maya, exhausted from helping set up, goes back to the room where Elena and Sebastian were finalizing Elysium Veiled and walks into pure chaos.
Chaos. Like the exhibit was vandalized.
Totally trash, slashed canvases, paint everywhere, materials thrown around like someone just went crazy. But the worst part, Sebastian, he was lying there in the middle of it all, his body covered in that same amethyst dust used in the installation.
That's just creepy. The symbolism alone is enough to give you goosebumps.
Yeah, right. The very things that were supposed to represent resilience and transformation are now connected to his death. It's like the artwork itself is screaming a message.
So the police arrive. They see all of this. Who are they immediately looking at as suspects?
Well, they naturally focus on those closest to Sebastian, the people who were at the gallery that night.
Yeah.
They start with Dr. Voss and Maya Lark, the last two people to see him alive.
Okay, Elena Voss, a brilliant scientist, and Maya, her ambitious student. What were their relationships with Sebastian like?
Elena and Sebastian's dynamic was complicated. They had this mutual respect, this creative spark, but there was also tension, maybe even a little professional rivalry going on under the
It's like
surface.
that classic clash between logic and emotion, right? The scientist focused on data,
Yeah.
the artist driven by intuition.
Exactly. And then you've got Maya, who was not only Elena's student, but also had a secret crush on Sebastian. It's a classic love triangle, only this one ends in tragedy.
A love triangle. Oh, this just got interesting. Tell me more about Maya's feelings for Sebastian.
Well, according to the sources, it was one-sided. He saw her as a student, a mentee, while she wanted something more. That unrequited love, combined with her ambition and the already tense atmosphere, created a real powder keg of emotions.
So we have a scientist with potential professional rivalry, a student harboring secret feelings, and a murder scene that's like right out of a horror movie.
Uh,
Okay, I'm hooked. What did Detective Lucy Chow, the lead investigator, give her? What did she find out in those initial interviews?
Well, what's really interesting about Detective Chow's approach is that she didn't just see this as a simple murder. She understood that to solve it, she had to really get into the art world to unravel all the relationships and motivations.
But she was more than just a detective. She was an art enthusiast trying to crack the code of this creative community.
Precisely, and what she uncovers in those interviews is fascinating. But before we jump into that, let's take a closer look at the forensic evidence. This is where the science really starts to fill in the gaps.
All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty. What did they find at the crime scene?
Remember that amethyst dust I mentioned? Well, it wasn't just on Sebastian's body, it was everywhere. Mixed in the paint, embedded in the canvas on the floor. The lab analysis showed it was high-grade amethyst, the same type used in Elysium Veiled.
Okay, so it's more than just a symbol. It's a direct link to the artwork and maybe to the killer. What else did they find?
The chemical analysis was even more interesting. They found traces of a specific solvent on the installation, something a professional artist might use, but not your average cleaner.
So our killer might be someone with artistic knowledge. What about fingerprints?
Oh, yeah. And this is where things get even more complicated. They found fingerprints from both Elena Voss and another artist, Clara Jennings, on the vandalized artwork.
Clara Jennings. I remember her name from the case files. Who is she and how does she fit into all of this?
Clara was a well-known artist in the community, and she had a very public feud with Sebastian. They were rivals competing for recognition, exhibition space, everything. She felt threatened by his success, and there were even rumors of plagiarism accusations. Jealousy in the art world can be a powerful motivator.
Yeah, no doubt. So we have Elena Maya and now Clara, all connected to Sebastian and that amethyst dust. Any other surprises from the crime scene?
One of the most puzzling pieces of evidence was a shoe print found in the amethyst dust near Sebastian's body. The thing is, it didn't match any of the suspects.
A mysterious shoe print. But that's a cliffhanger. What about Sebastian himself? Did the autopsy tell us anything about how he died?
The autopsy confirmed he died from a blow to the head. But here's the twist: the toxicology report showed he'd been sedated before the attack.
Wait, sedated? You mean someone drugged him before killing him? This was planned.
That's what it looks like. He had a high level of a mild sedative in his system, something that would have made him drowsy and confused. It wasn't enough to kill him on its own, but it would have made him an easy target.
This is getting more and more twisted. So we've got our victim, our suspects, a mysterious shoe print, and now evidence that Sebastian was drugged. Where do we go from here?
Well, next we'll dig deeper into Detective Cho's interviews. Each conversation peels back another layer of this tangled web, revealing hidden resentments, secret desires, and a whole lot of unanswered questions. We're piecing together this puzzle of Sebastian Carr's murder, and as we look closer at Detective Cho's interviews, things get even more complicated. Remember, we're not just looking for a killer. We're trying to understand what would push someone to do something so brutal. The ambition, the jealousy, the passion, all tangled up.
Yeah, it's like a psychological thriller unfolding in real life. Each interview, another layer of the story, secrets and lies. I want to hear it all. Let's start with Dr. Voss. What was she like in the interview?
Elena, she was really shaken up, which makes sense considering what happened. She talked about working with Sebastian, the long hours on Elysium Veiled, the creative energy between them. But she also admitted they had some disagreements, especially towards the end.
The classic clash of perspectives. What were they disagreeing about?
It seemed to be about their different approaches to the project. Elena, being a scientist, she wanted to focus on the research, the scientific side of the art. And Sebastian, the artist, he was more interested in the emotional impact, the meaning behind the extremophiles.
A battle of logic versus emotion. Did she say anything else that stood out?
One thing that caught Detective Chow's attention was Elena mentioning a phone call right before Maya found the body. She left the room for about 15 minutes to talk to a colleague about a grant proposal.
15 minutes alone right before the murder? Did she have a good alibi for that time?
She said she was on the phone the whole time, but someone saw her outside the building just minutes before Maya called 911. That discrepancy really made Detective Chow suspicious.
Hmm, interesting. So Elena's story might not be as solid as she made it seem. Let's move on to Maya Lark. You mentioned she had feelings for Sebastian. Did that come up in her interview?
Oh, yeah, she admitted to having feelings for him, but insisted it was all in the past. She said she was jealous of Elena's relationship with him, but swore she had nothing to do with the murder.
I bet those feelings of jealousy were even stronger because she was Elena's protege, working so closely with both of them. It's like a tangled mess of relationships.
Exactly. And remember, Sebastian was sedated before he was attacked. Maya, as Dr. Voss's assistant, had access to the lab and all sorts of chemicals. Detective Chow was very interested in that detail.
So she had the means and the opportunity. What about an alibi?
She said she'd left the gallery to get coffee and came back to find Sebastian's body. But her alibi fell apart when Detective Chow checked her phone records. Her last call was right before she supposedly found the body. Something wasn't adding up.
That's definitely suspicious. It seems like Maya's story is falling apart. What about Clara Jennings, the rival artist? What was her take on all of this?
Clara tried to downplay the rivalry with Sebastian, saying they actually respected each other's work. She insisted she had no reason to hurt him, that she was setting up her own exhibits somewhere else in the gallery when it happened.
But her fingerprints were on the vandalized artwork, right? That's pretty incriminating.
It is, but it's not conclusive. Her prints could have been there from earlier in the evening, maybe when she was working on her own piece or even just looking at Sebastian's work. It doesn't necessarily mean she was there when he died.
So she had a motive and maybe an opportunity, but her alibi might be solid. We can't rule her out yet. We also can't forget about that mysterious shoe print. Did they figure out who it belonged to?
That's the big question, isn't it? Detective Chow was really stumped by that shoe print. It didn't match any of the suspects, but the style suggested it was someone from the local art scene.
Okay, before we get into that, I want to go back to Elysium Veiled for a minute. It's more than just background noise in this case, right? And it's like it reflects the themes and conflicts at play.
You're right, it's a really important point. Elysium Veiled is like a mirror reflecting the dark side of ambition and the way jealousy can destroy. Remember, the piece was supposed to be about resilience, finding beauty in the face of hardship. But those same qualities can get twisted when they're taken too far.
It's almost like Sebastian's art predicted his own fate. The themes he explored in Elysium Veiled, transformation, resilience, the fight against darkness, it's all there in the events leading up to his death.
Exactly. It's almost like the artwork itself is trying to tell us something to reveal a hidden truth, but we still haven't figured out what that truth is.
This case is giving me chills seriously.
Yeah.
Every time we get close to an answer, there's a new twist, a new layer, and the mystery just gets deeper. What happens next? Does Detective Chow finally solve it?
She does, but the road to the truth is full of even more surprises, shocking discoveries, and a courtroom battle that had the whole town on the edge of their seats.
So we left off with this mystery shoe print at the crime scene and all these unanswered questions. Did Detective Chow ever find out who it belonged to?
She did. It turns out the shoe print belonged to this struggling artist, Ryan Preston, someone who had always been kind of in the shadows of the art scene, overshadowed by the success of others, especially Sebastian.
Oh, wow. So we've got another layer of rivalry we haven't even talked about. Tell me more about this Ryan Preston.
Well, imagine you're an artist. You're putting your heart and soul into your work, but you're constantly being overlooked. That was Ryan's life. He felt like Sebastian was getting all the attention, all the chances, while he was left behind, struggling to even get noticed.
So there's definitely a motive there. Was there any connection between Ryan and Sebastian or the Harmony Festival?
He had been going to the festival for years, hoping to finally get some recognition for his art. But it seems like his resentment towards Sebastian had been growing for a long time.
Did Detective Chow find any evidence actually linking Ryan to the crime scene?
Yes, she did. Remember that solvent they found on the vandalized artwork? Turns out Ryan had been using that same solvent in his own studio. Forensics confirmed it was a match.
Okay, so we've got the solvent, the shoe print, and a lot of resentment. What was Ryan's alibi for that night?
At first, he said he wasn't even at the gallery that night. But then security footage showed him hanging around the area where they found Sebastian's body. When they showed him the footage, Ryan changed his story. He admitted to having a big argument with Sebastian earlier that evening, accusing him of stealing his ideas.
Ah, so it was artistic jealousy taken to the extreme.
Yeah.
Did Ryan confess to the murder?
He didn't. He kept saying that the argument was just a disagreement about art and that he left before anything happened to Sebastian, but there was just too much evidence against him.
So what happened then? Did they arrest him?
Yeah, with the solvent, the shoe print, the security footage, and the witnesses who saw them arguing, Detective Chow had enough to arrest Ryan Preston for Sebastian Carr's murder.
Wow, what was the reaction in the art community? I imagine this must have really shaken things up at the Harmony Festival.
It did. The festival, which was supposed to be all about creativity and working together, was now overshadowed by this awful tragedy. People were in shock, horrified. Some even felt guilty that they hadn't seen how much resentment was bubbling under the surface.
It's a good reminder that things aren't always what they seem. So what about Ryan? Did he go to trial?
He did, and the trial was huge. Everyone in town was following it, wanting to see justice done. The prosecution laid out all the evidence really clearly. The shoe print, the solvent, the footage, the witnesses, everything. They even brought up Ryan admitting to the argument with Sebastian.
What about Ryan's defense? What did they say?
His lawyers argued that the evidence didn't prove anything for sure. They said the solvent was common, that anyone could have worn those shoes, and that arguing with Sebastian didn't mean he killed him. They tried to paint Ryan as a desperate artist who just wanted to be recognized, not a murderer.
So it was a battle of interpretations. What did the jury decide in the end?
After weeks of talking it over, the jury found Ryan Preston guilty. But not of murder, they found him guilty of manslaughter.
Manslaughter. What's the difference?
The manslaughter verdict meant that the jury believed Ryan hadn't planned to kill Sebastian. They thought it was a crime of passion, something that happened in a moment of anger, driven by his jealousy and resentment.
So even though he didn't go there intending to kill Sebastian, his actions that night, fueled by all those emotions, led to his death. What was his sentence?
He was sentenced to 5 years in prison.
5 years. It's a sad ending to a story that started with so much hope and creativity. What happened to the others involved Elena Maya Clara.
Sebastian's death changed everyone who knew him. Elena Voss, she stepped back from her research, started questioning the cost of ambition and the balance between science and art. Maya Lark, she was heartbroken and left the university. She found comfort in her own art, trying to process the tragedy through her work. And Clara Jennings, she was really affected by what happened at the Harmony Festival, and she dedicated herself to mentoring young artists, hoping to create a more supportive, less competitive environment.
This case has been a real roller coaster. So many emotions, from the shock of the murder to the secrets and resentments, and then the complexities of the trial. It reminds us that even in a world that celebrates creativity and harmony, there can still be darkness.
Absolutely. And it's a reminder that chasing success and recognition can sometimes have a very high price.
The case of Sebastian Carr may be officially closed, but there are still so many questions. What did you find most interesting in our deep dive? What are you still thinking about? Thanks for joining us on this journey into a murder mystery that goes so much deeper than just finding the killer.